Imagine saving every penny for your dream home, only to watch your family take it all for a lavish trip they didn't deserve. What would you do if the people you trusted most laughed in your face when you asked for it back? I'm Ethan, and I did the unthinkable. I sued my own parents to get back the $150,000 they stole from me. This is the story of why I fought, and it might just make you rethink what family really means. I'm not giving it back. That money was for your sister's happiness. It's a family thing. What? You gonna drag your own mom to court? Those were the words my stepmother, Diane, threw at me when I dared to ask about the $150,000 she'd taken from my savings to fund my half-sister's extravagant European honeymoon. I didn't yell. I didn't break down. I didn't plead like they always expected me to. Instead, I stood there, silent, wondering what would happen if I chose to fight for what was mine instead of swallowing another family betrayal. So, I did something unthinkable. I sued my father, Michael Thompson, and my stepmother, Diane, for stealing my future. Not because I hated them, but because I realized if I didn't stand up, they'd keep walking over me, waving the banner of family like it excused everything. This is my story, and if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, maybe you'll get why I did it. My name's Ethan. I'm 34, living in Portland, Oregon, and it's taken me most of my life to learn that the worst scars don't come from fights. They come from years of being pushed aside, ignored, and used by the people who were supposed to love you most. My mom died when I was 12, hit by a drunk driver on her way home from her nursing shift at Providence Hospital. I can still see her in my mind. Her laugh, the way she'd hum while cooking dinner, the way she'd tuck me in with a whispered, "You're my whole world, kiddo." Her death shattered our little family of two. I remember Dad's face at the funeral, pale and hollow, his hands trembling as he clutched her favorite scarf, a soft blue thing she'd worn every winter. That was the last time I saw him cry, the last time I felt like he truly saw me as his son, not just a burden he had to manage. 2 years later, Diane came into our lives. I was 14, awkward and grieving, still sleeping with Mom's scarf under my pillow. Diane was a paralegal at Dad's firm, all sharp suits and sharper smiles. When Dad was around, she'd ruffle my hair, ask about school, play the part of the doting stepmom. But the second he left the room, her mask slipped. Her eyes would go cold, her voice clipped, like I was an inconvenience she had to tolerate. "Don't leave your shoes in the hall, Ethan," she'd snap. Or, "Can you not make so much noise?" She never hit me, never yelled, but her quiet disapproval was a blade, slicing away at the fragile confidence of a kid who just wanted to be seen. I learned to make myself small, to tiptoe around her moods, to keep my grief and my needs to myself. When I was 15, my half-sister Chloe was born. I remember the day vividly. Dad bursting into the house after a long night at the hospital, his face lit up with a joy I hadn't seen since Mom was alive. He held Chloe up in her tiny pink blanket, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "She's our little miracle," he said, tears in his eyes as he looked at Diane. I forced a smile, but inside, something broke. A quiet, lonely fracture in a kid who didn't yet know how to name the ache in his chest. I wanted to be happy for them. I really did. But all I could think was, what about me? Wasn't I a miracle too once? From that day on, I faded into the background of our suburban split-level house in Beaverton, a quiet Portland suburb with tree-lined streets and cul-de-sacs. Chloe's birthdays were full-blown events. Bounce houses in the backyard, catered cupcakes with edible glitter, neighborhood kids spilling out onto the lawn with balloons and laughter. I can still picture her 5th birthday, the way the house smelled like sugar and sunscreen, the sound of happy birthday echoing as Diane lit the candles on a 3-tiered cake shaped like a unicorn. My birthdays? If I was lucky, I'd get a text from Dad, "Happy B-Day, bud," or a $20 bill slipped under my door with a post-it that said, "Treat yourself." Most years, they forgot entirely. I'd sit in my room, listening to the hum of the AC, pretending I didn't care. But the hurt was a quiet, gnawing thing, like a splinter I couldn't pull out. I'll never forget my junior year of high school. I'd worked for months on a coding project for the state STEM fair, staying up late in my room with a secondhand laptop that wheezed like it was on its last legs. I wrote a program to track local air quality, debugging lines of Python until my eyes burned. I took third place, not bad for a kid with no fancy tutors or tech camps. I came home with a certificate, my name printed in bold, hoping for a pat on the back, maybe a "proud of you, Ethan." I found Dad and Diane in the kitchen, helping Chloe with her kindergarten art project, a glittery construction paper butterfly with googly eyes. "Look what Chloe made," Diane said, taping it to the fridge like it was a Picasso. My certificate didn't even get a glance. "That's nice," Dad muttered, not looking up from the glitter mess. It ended up in a drawer, buried under old bills and takeout menus, while Chloe's butterfly stayed on the fridge for months. That wasn't the only time. When I made the varsity soccer team in 9th grade, I came home buzzing with pride, my jersey slung over my shoulder. I'd scored the winning goal in our first scrimmage, and my coach had called me a natural. I couldn't wait to tell Dad, to see his face light up the way it used to when I'd show him my Lego creations as a kid. But when I walked in, he was on the phone, laughing about Chloe's first word, Dada. He waved me off, mouthing, "Later." But later never came. The next day, Diane had Chloe's milestone written on a chalkboard sign, propped up on the mantel next to a framed photo of her first smile. My jersey stayed in my gym bag, the excitement fading like a balloon losing air. When Chloe brought home a star student sticker from first grade, a gold star with a smiley face, they laminated it and stuck it on the mantel like it was an Olympic medal. "Our little genius," Dad said, kissing her forehead as she beamed. I was 17, sitting at the dining table with my calculus homework, watching the whole scene unfold. I'd just gotten a 98 on my midterm, my best grade yet. But I didn't bother mentioning it. I knew it wouldn't matter. I'd learned by then that my achievements were invisible, that I was the backdrop to Chloe's spotlight, the stage crew setting up the lights for her show. As a teenager, I thought if I worked harder, they'd notice me. I'd stay up late studying, help with chores without being asked, mow the lawn every Saturday even when my allergies flared up from the grass. I'd keep my room spotless, my voice quiet, my needs buried. But by the time I hit my 20s, I realized it didn't matter how hard I tried. I'd never be the main character in their story. The worst part? I let them convince me that was okay. I let them decide my worth, and that's a regret I'll carry forever. I spent years telling myself it was fine, that I didn't need their validation, that I could love them from the sidelines. But deep down, I was starving for a scrap of their pride, a moment where I wasn't just the invisible older brother. But I didn't let it break me. I pushed myself harder than ever. I graduated from Oregon State with a degree in computer science, busting my ass through late-night coding sessions and part-time jobs at the campus coffee shop. I landed a job as a software engineer at a tech startup in downtown Portland, a scrappy little company called GreenWave that built apps for renewable energy tracking. My salary was solid, $90,000 a year, enough to start saving for a dream I'd held since I was a kid. Buying my own place, a quiet condo where I could build a life that was mine, not defined by anyone else's rules. I'd lie awake at night, scrolling through Zillow listings, imagining a space with big windows, a corner for my desk, a kitchen where I could cook without Diane's passive-aggressive comments about using her pans. To save faster, I stayed at home in Beaverton, commuting 20 minutes to work through Portland's misty mornings, the Columbia River Gorge looming in the distance. My old bedroom hadn't changed much. Same creaky twin bed I'd slept in since middle school. Same faded posters of Radiohead and The Matrix peeling at the corners. Same sense that I was just passing through, a guest in my own life. The room smelled faintly of old books and the lavender air freshener Diane kept in the hall, a scent that always made me sneeze. I'd sit on that bed, my laptop balanced on my knees, watching the numbers in my savings account grow. $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, each milestone a step closer to freedom. I didn't pay rent, but I wasn't a freeloader. I covered the Wi-Fi bill every month, paid half the electric bill, bought groceries every other week, organic apples, almond milk, the fancy oat milk Chloe liked even though it cost twice as much. When the water heater broke last winter, I chipped in $800 for a new one, even though I'd just paid off my car insurance. I even sent Chloe $50 here and there for coffee runs or concert tickets, $50 for a Billie Eilish show, $30 for a new pair of sneakers she needed for a festival. Nobody asked me to do it. I just did, because I thought that's what family does. I thought contributing would earn me a place at the table, a nod of respect, a moment where I wasn't just the quiet one who stayed out of the way. I was wrong. I wasn't just the family wallet. They treated me like an ATM with no PIN required. I remember the first time it happened, a few years after I started working. Diane texted me late one night, her tone all syrupy sweet, the kind of tone that made my stomach twist. "Ethan, sweetie, Chloe's summer camp fees are due tomorrow. $500. Can you help out? I'll pay you back next month, I promise." I was 25, still new to my job, still figuring out how to budget on a junior developer's salary. But I sent the money, no questions asked, because I wanted to be the good brother, the helpful son. Next month never came. I didn't bring it up. I was too afraid of rocking the boat, of hearing that sharp laugh Diane always used when I dared to ask for anything. Then there was the time Dad needed $1,200 for a new transmission on his truck. It was a rainy October evening, the kind where the Portland drizzle never stops, and I'd just gotten home from a 10-hour day at the office. He cornered me in the garage, the fluorescent light flickering overhead as he pointed at his beat-up Ford. "It's shot, Ethan. I've got a guy coming tomorrow, but I need $1,200 up front. Can you spot me? I'll square it up by Christmas." I nodded, pulled out my phone, and Venmo'd him the money right there, my fingers cold from the damp air. Christmas came and went. Nothing. I didn't ask, because I knew what he'd say. "Family doesn't keep score," he'd told me once, his voice low and sharp, when I'd casually mentioned the camp money at Thanksgiving a few years back. Diane had laughed then, a sound like breaking glass. "Ethan, really? You're keeping track of that?" Everything changed 18 months ago over a tense Sunday brunch. I'd been saving for 3 years, scraping together $150,000, enough for a down payment on a condo in the Pearl District, a trendy spot in Portland with coffee shops on every corner, bike lanes weaving through the streets, and a vibe that felt like freedom. I'd fallen in love with a sleek one-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows, a balcony overlooking the Willamette River, and a co-working space in the building where I could code late into the night. I pulled up the listing on my phone, showed Dad the photos as we sat at the kitchen table, the smell of Diane's overcooked quiche lingering in the air. "I'm meeting the realtor next week," I said, trying to keep my excitement in check. "It's perfect. Close to work, good investment. I'll be out by spring." I waited for a nod. That's great, Ethan." Anything to show he cared. Instead, he leaned back, sipped his coffee and said, "Why rush? You've got it good here. Real estate's a gamble these days. Prices are through the roof." His words hit like a punch I should have seen coming. I stared at him, not because I was surprised, but because I realized he didn't want me to leave. Not because he loved having me around, but because keeping me under his roof meant keeping me under his thumb. a reliable source of cash when they needed it. I swallowed hard, kept my voice steady. I've got $150,000 saved. It's enough for 40% down, but I'd rather not take a huge loan. If you could help with a bit, I'd pay you back. No interest, just monthly payments. I was reaching, testing him, hoping he'd meet me halfway. He didn't. He just chuckled, like I'd told a bad joke. Ethan, you're living rent-free, no bills, no stress. What's the hurry? A condo can wait. Then he stood, cleared his plate, and walked out, leaving me with the dishes and a sinking feeling that my future wasn't his priority. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the listing on my phone, the photos of that condo blurring as my eyes stung. I wasn't asking for much, just a sign that he believed in me, that he saw my dream as worth supporting. But I should have known better. I'd spent my whole life chasing their approval, and all I'd gotten was a front-row seat to their indifference. I closed my laptop, pushed down the lump in my throat, and told myself I'd figure it out on my own. I always had. A month later, I was in the living room, scrolling through mortgage calculators on my laptop, the rain pattering against the windows in a steady Portland drizzle. Diane called me over, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the TV. She was perched on the couch, a glass of Pinot Grigio in hand, her smile too perfect, like a real estate agent closing a deal. Dad sat beside her, flipping through a golf magazine, barely looking up. "We need to talk about Chloe," Diane said, her voice syrupy sweet, the kind that made my stomach twist. I set my laptop aside, my guard already up. I knew that tone. It was the prelude to a favor I wouldn't want to grant. "Chloe's getting married in June," she went on, swirling her wine. "She and Ryan have their hearts set on this incredible honeymoon. A month in Europe, Paris, Santorini, the works. But weddings are expensive, and we're stretched thin. You've got that money saved up, right? We were hoping you could loan it to us." I froze, my laptop screen still glowing with the condo listing, the numbers of my dream home staring back at me. Loan it? They knew exactly what that money was for. I'd told Dad a month ago, showed him the damn floor plan, laid out my whole plan, like a kid showing off a drawing. I looked at him, waiting for him to say something, anything, but he just turned a page, eyes glued to an ad for putters. "How much?" I asked, my voice flat, though inside I was screaming. Diane didn't blink. $150,000. It'll cover the honeymoon and some wedding extras. Chloe deserves this, Ethan. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so brazen. They weren't asking for a favor. They were demanding a sacrifice, expecting me to hand over my future without a second thought. Before I could answer, Chloe bounced in. Her phone screen lit up with Instagram shots of cliffside villas and cobblestone streets. She was 22, fresh out of college with a marketing degree she hadn't used yet, spending most of her days planning her wedding and posting selfies. "Oh my God, Ethan, you have to see this," she said, shoving the phone in my face, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Santorini at sunset, it's literally perfect. And Paris for the food, Rome for the history. Ryan's obsessed with this one hotel with a rooftop pool." I scanned the screen, my jaw tightening. The package she was gushing over started at $80,000 for two, not counting flights, dinners, or the private yacht experience she kept circling in the brochure. I looked at Dad again, my voice steady but sharp. "If money's tight, why go this big?" Chloe's face fell, her eyes narrowing like I'd insulted her entire existence. "Seriously? This is my dream, Ethan. Why do you have to make it about money?" Her voice was a mix of hurt and indignation, like I'd just ruined her fairy tale. Diane jumped in, her tone soft but cutting, the wine glass still in her hand. "Ethan, this is your sister. Some things matter more than dollars and cents. Your family. This is when you step up. Dad finally looked up, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. You've got the money, Ethan. We don't. Chloe's not getting married every day. Your condo, it's not going anywhere. His words were a command, not a request, and I felt the weight of 20 years of being the one who gives, never takes, pressing down on me like a boulder. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, letting their words sink in, the rain outside a steady drumbeat against the silence in the room. I thought about all the times I'd said yes, all the times I'd given in, hoping it'd earn me a seat at the family table. I thought about the $500 for Chloe's summer camp, the $1,200 for Dad's truck, the countless smaller amounts I'd handed over without a second thought. $50 for Chloe's prom dress, $100 for Dad's golf club membership renewal, $200 for Diane's emergency car repair that somehow never got repaid. Each time I'd told myself it was fine, that family helps family, that one day they'd see me. But sitting there, with Chloe's Instagram dreams flashing on her phone and Diane's expectant smile boring into me, I realized they never would. I was their safety net, their backup plan, nothing more. I told them I'd think about it, bought myself a day to process. I went back to my room, shut the door, and sat on my bed, the mattress creaking under my weight. I opened my laptop, pulled up the condo listing again, and stared at the photos. The sleek kitchen, the balcony with a view of the river, the life I'd been building in my mind for years. I thought about what it would mean to give that up, to hand over my dream so Chloe could live hers. I thought about Mom, what she'd say if she were here. She'd always told me to stand up for myself, to chase what made me happy. "You're enough, Ethan," she'd said once, brushing my hair back after a long day. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I closed my eyes, her voice echoing in my head, and made a decision. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept looping through memories, times I'd given in, times I'd stayed silent, hoping it'd earn me a place in their hearts. I thought about my 16th birthday, when I'd waited all day for a cake that never came, only to find out they'd taken Chloe to the zoo instead. I thought about the time I'd saved up to buy Dad a Father's Day gift, a nice leather wallet I'd seen him eyeing at the mall, only for him to toss it on the counter with a distracted, "Thanks, bud," while he gushed over Chloe's handmade card. I thought about the late nights at Greenwave, the hours I'd spent coding under fluorescent lights, the coffee runs and skipped lunches to save every penny of that $150,000. I thought about how I'd never asked them for anything, how I'd always been the one to give, and how they'd never once hesitated to take. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I'd give them the money, but not blindly. I opened my banking app, typed in $150,000, and drafted a message to Diane. "I'm transferring $150,000 for Chloe's honeymoon. I expect it back by August 1st, 2024, so I can close on my condo. This is a loan, not a gift. Please confirm you understand." My finger hovered over the send button, my heart pounding. I knew what I was risking, not just the money, but the fragile thread of connection I still had with my family. But I couldn't keep living like this, always giving, never getting, always the shadow in their light. I hit send, then screenshotted everything. Message, transfer receipt, all of it. I emailed copies to myself, backed them up on a USB drive, even printed a hard copy and tucked it into a lockbox under my bed. Not because I didn't trust them, because I knew I couldn't. Diane replied within minutes. "Got it, Ethan. We'll pay it back by August. Promise." "Thank you. This means the world to Chloe." I read it, saved it, and waited. I didn't nag, didn't bring it up. I just watched, because deep down I knew promises in this house were like leaves in autumn, pretty until they fell. I went about my days, commuting to Greenwave, coding new features for our app, grabbing beers with my co-worker Jake on Fridays at a dive bar downtown. Jake was the only one I told about the loan over a pitcher of IPA one rainy evening. "Dude, that's messed up," he said, shaking his head. "You're too nice, man. They're taking advantage of you." I shrugged, staring at the foam on my beer. "They're family," I said, but the words felt hollow, like a script I'd been reading too long. Chloe's wedding was straight out of a Pinterest board, a vineyard in Willamette Valley, an hour south of Portland, with rolling hills and rows of grapevines stretching into the distance. String lights twinkled over linen-draped tables. A live jazz band filled the air with soft saxophone notes, and the smell of lavender and wine hung heavy in the summer breeze. I sat near the back, nursing a glass of overpriced rosé, watching my savings come to life in fairy lights, imported champagne, and a 5-tiered cake that must have cost more than my monthly salary. Chloe looked like a princess in her lace gown, her laughter ringing out as she danced with Ryan, a finance bro who spent half the night talking about crypto. Nobody thanked me. Nobody even looked my way. I felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of their perfect day, my sacrifice reduced to a footnote in their fairy tale. Chloe and Ryan left for Europe the next week, posting daily updates, Eiffel Tower selfies at golden hour, Santorini sunsets with the whitewashed cliffs glowing pink, pasta in Florence with truffle shavings that probably cost more than my rent. I scrolled through their stories on Instagram, each photo a reminder of the condo I'd put on hold, each caption a stab in the chest. "Living our best life," Chloe wrote under a shot of her and Ryan on a yacht, clinking champagne glasses. I closed the app, my jaw tight, and tried to focus on work. But every notification, every post, was a reminder of what I'd given up. 3 weeks after they got back, I sent Diane a text. "Hey, just a reminder. Need $150,000 by August 1st for my condo deposit. Let me know if we need to work out a plan." Crickets. No reply, no read receipt, nothing. I waited a day, then tried Dad, calling him at lunch while I sat in the Greenwave break room, a half-eaten sandwich in front of me. He answered, sounding annoyed, like I'd interrupted a meeting. "Ethan, what's up?" I kept it light, calm, though my heart was racing. "Just checking in about the money. August is coming up and I need it for the condo." He sighed, loud and exasperated, the sound crackling through the phone. "You're really doing this? That was for your sister, man. Can't you let it go?" His words cut deeper than I expected, a sharp, familiar sting that took me back to every time I dared to ask for fairness. I gripped my phone, steadying my voice, though I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "Dad, we had an agreement. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking for what's mine." He didn't respond for a long moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd heard me. But then he said, "You're being selfish, Ethan," and hung up. I sat there, staring at my sandwich, the break room suddenly too quiet, the hum of the fridge too loud. Selfish. The word echoed in my head, a cruel irony after years of giving everything I had. That night, Chloe texted me, "Wow, Ethan, didn't think you'd be that guy. It's my honeymoon. Chill." She added a rolling eyes emoji, like my life's work was a punchline, a petty inconvenience to her perfect story. I didn't respond, but something in me shifted, a quiet, final click, like a door locking for good. I thought about all the times I'd been there for her, driving her to school when she missed the bus, helping her with her college essays, sending her money for Coachella tickets when she forgot to budget. I'd never asked for anything in return, but now, when I needed her to see me, to understand what I'd given up, she couldn't even muster a shred of empathy. 5 days before the deadline, I tried one last time. I texted Dad, "Can we meet for coffee this weekend?" Want to sort out the money before it gets messy? No answer. I followed up the next day. Dad, 15 minutes. I don't want to escalate this, but the condo deal's on the line. Still nothing. Saturday morning, I showed up at our usual spot, a hipster cafe in the Alberta Arts District with overpriced lattes and exposed brick walls. I ordered a black coffee, sat by the window, and waited, watching the door as Portland's drizzle streaked the glass. 10 a.m. came and went. 10:30. 11. I stayed until my coffee was cold, the barista giving me a pitying look as she wiped down tables. He didn't come. I drove home, the rain heavier now, the wipers on my old Toyota swishing rhythmically as I navigated the slick streets. I thought about what Jake had said at the bar. They're taking advantage of you. I'd brushed it off then, but now, with the empty cafe chair still vivid in my mind, I knew he was right. I'd given them every chance to make this right, to keep their word, to treat me like I mattered. They hadn't even bothered to show up. That night, I got home to the usual scene. Diane on the couch with her reality TV, the Real Housewives screaming at each other in the background. Dad scrolling through his phone, probably checking golf scores. Chloe and Ryan sprawled on the floor, laughing over some TikTok video, their bare feet tangled together. I stood in the doorway, the rain still dripping from my jacket, and cleared my throat. I asked to meet today about the money. Nobody showed. My voice was steady, but inside I was trembling, a mix of anger and hurt I couldn't quite name. Diane rolled her eyes, didn't even pause her show, her fingers tapping the remote. Ethan, you're being dramatic. You've got a good job, a roof over your head. Why obsess over this? Dad chimed in, not looking up from his phone, his tone dismissive. Yeah, kid, relax. You're not starving. Chloe piped up, smirking as she scrolled through her phone. If you're so worried about money, maybe get your own place, huh? Ryan laughed, popping a chip in his mouth, his voice lazy. Man, this is better than Netflix. I took a breath, kept my voice even, though I could feel the heat rising in my chest. You promised to pay it back by August. That was the deal. Diane scoffed, her tone sharp now, cutting through the canned laughter on the TV. Deals? We're your family, not a bank. Chloe sat up, crossing her arms, her smirk gone, replaced by a look of indignation. You're seriously going to ruin my wedding memories over this? You're unbelievable, Ethan. Ryan nodded, still chewing, his voice muffled. Harsh, dude. Harsh. I didn't flinch. I'd started recording the second I walked in, my phone tucked in my jacket pocket, the red dot blinking silently as it captured every word. Oregon's a one-party consent state. I didn't need their permission. I let them talk, let them dig their hole deeper, their voices layering over each other like a chorus of disregard. Diane's voice rose, her face flushed with anger, her wine glass slamming down on the coffee table. I told you, Ethan, we're not paying it back. That was for Chloe's happiness, a family thing. What, you gonna drag your mom to court? Chloe laughed, a sharp, mocking sound, and Dad shook his head, muttering, ungrateful. Ryan just kept eating his chips, the crunch punctuating their disdain. I said nothing, just let the recorder catch every word, every accusation, every dismissal, every laugh. 7 years to save that money. 10 minutes to see who they really were. I stood there, the rain still drying on my jacket, the weight of their words settling into my bones. I didn't feel angry, not anymore. I felt cold, clear, like the fog had finally lifted and I could see them for what they were. Not my family, not in the way I'd always wanted them to be, but people who'd used me, who'd taken my kindness and twisted it into something they could exploit. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Sarah Nguyen, in her small office downtown, all glass walls and minimalist furniture, the Portland skyline a gray blur through the window. I handed her everything, bank records, text screenshots, the 10-minute audio file. She listened to the recording on her laptop, her face calm but focused, jotting notes on a legal pad as Diane's voice echoed through the speakers. "What? You gonna drag your mom to court?" When it finished, she looked up, her expression steady. "This is solid," she said, tapping her pen against the pad. "We've got a case." I nodded, my throat tight, the reality of what I was about to do sinking in. "I don't want to hurt them," I said, my voice low. "I just want what's mine." Sarah gave me a small, understanding smile. "I know, Ethan. But sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's hard." She leaned forward, her voice firm. "They made a promise. They broke it. The law's on your side." I took a deep breath, the weight of her words grounding me, and gave her the go-ahead. That afternoon, we sent a letter to Dad and Diane, the words typed in crisp black ink on Sarah's letterhead. "On behalf of Ethan Thompson, we demand repayment of $150,000 transferred to Diane Thompson on February 10th, 2024, with a documented agreement for repayment by August 1st, 2024. Failure to comply within 14 days will result in a civil lawsuit for misappropriation of funds and breach of contract. This is a formal notice to protect our client's rights. Sincerely, Sarah Nguyen, Attorney at Law, Portland, Oregon." I read it over in Sarah's office, the paper cool against my fingers, and felt a strange mix of relief and dread. This was it. No turning back. Diane called me the next day, her voice shaking with panic as I sat at my desk at Greenwave, the hum of the office around me. "Ethan, a lawyer? Are you serious? We're your family. Why humiliate us like this?" Her words were a mix of anger and desperation, like she couldn't believe I'd actually followed through. I stayed calm, my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. "I gave you months to make it right. You chose not to." There was a long pause, her breathing heavy on the other end, and then she hung up. That was it. No more calls, no texts, just silence, like they thought ignoring me would make it go away. I didn't wait for them to change their minds. I moved out the next week, rented a one-bedroom apartment in southeast Portland. Hardwood floors, a view of Mount Tabor through the window, a quiet corner that felt like mine. I found the place on Craigslist, a steal at $1,400 a month, and signed the lease the same day, my hands shaking as I wrote the check for the deposit. I packed my life into 5 boxes and a duffel bag, clothes, books, my laptop, a few photos of Mom, the scarf she'd worn that I still kept in a Ziploc bag to preserve her scent. I left my room spotless, the bed made, the posters taken down, the walls bare. On the kitchen counter, where Diane used to leave Christmas cookies every year, I placed an envelope, copies of the transfer, the texts, the lawyer's letter, and a single note in my handwriting. This was my future, not your gift. I locked the door behind me, walked to my car, and drove away, the Oregon rain streaking my windshield like tears I refused to shed. Moving into that apartment was the first time I'd ever felt truly free. I spent the first night on an air mattress, the hardwood floors cool against my feet, the silence of the space a balm after years of noise and tension. I ordered pizza from a place down the street, sat on the floor with a single lamp plugged in, and ate straight from the box, the city lights flickering outside my window. I didn't have much, no couch, no TV, just a folding chair and a suitcase. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living on someone else's terms, wasn't shrinking to fit their expectations. I fell asleep that night to the sound of rain, the air mattress creaking beneath me, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. 2 weeks later, Sarah got a response from their lawyer, a slick guy from a downtown firm, all polished jargon and deflection. I met her at a coffee shop near her office to go over it. the smell of espresso and cinnamon rolls filling the air as we sat at a corner table. She slid the letter across to me, her expression unreadable. The $150,000 was a familial gesture, not a loan, it read. No formal contract exists. I read it twice, my coffee growing cold, the words blurring as my anger rose. A familial gesture? I'd given them my life savings, my dream, and they were calling it a gesture? I looked at Sarah, my jaw tight. "They're lying," I said, my voice low. She nodded, her eyes steady. "I know. But we've got the evidence. They can spin it however they want. The court will see the truth." I texted her later that night from my apartment, the city lights casting shadows on my bare walls. "Let's do this." We filed in Multnomah County Court the next week, claiming misappropriation and breach of agreement. Our evidence was airtight. The transfer receipt showing the $150,000 moving from my account to Diane's, the text from Diane promising repayment by August 1st, the 10-minute audio of them laughing off their debt, Diane's voice sharp and unapologetic as she dared me to sue her. Sarah walked me through the process, her voice calm and methodical as she explained what to expect. Depositions, discovery, a hearing date set for late September. I nodded, taking notes on my laptop, trying to focus on the legal details instead of the ache in my chest. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about proving I mattered, that my dreams weren't disposable, that I wasn't invisible. The weeks leading up to the hearing were a blur. I threw myself into work at Greenwave, staying late to debug a new feature for our app. The glow of my monitor the only light in the empty office. Jake noticed the change in me. The way I'd go quiet at team happy hours. The way I'd check my phone every few minutes for updates from Sarah. "You okay, man?" he asked one night as we walked to our cars, the Portland skyline glittering in the distance. I hesitated, then told him everything. The loan, the betrayal, the lawsuit. He listened, his hands in his pockets, the streetlights casting shadows on his face. "That's heavy," he said when I finished, his voice soft. "But you're doing the right thing. They can't keep treating you like that." I nodded, grateful for his words, but the weight of what I was doing still pressed down on me, a constant ache I couldn't shake. Their lawyer tried to spin it as a family misunderstanding, argued that love doesn't come with contracts, that I was overreacting to a minor disagreement. He was a young guy, barely older than me, with a slick suit and a smirk that made my blood boil. During the deposition, he leaned back in his chair, tossing out questions like he was doing me a favor. "You didn't have a written contract, did you, Mr. Thompson?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. "You live with your parents rent-free. Surely you can understand their need for financial support?" I clenched my fists under the table, my voice steady as I answered. "I had a text agreement. They promised to pay me back, and I've been supporting them for years. Groceries, bills, repairs. This wasn't support. This was theft invited to a YouTube video titled, 'I Took My Parents to Court After They Stole My House Fund for My Sister's Wedding.' Family drama." The video's transcript describes a personal story about the narrator, David, suing his parents after they took his $120,000 savings meant for a house deposit to fund his half-sister, Violet's wedding. David recounts a lifetime of being overlooked by his family. His stepmother, Clara, and father Richard favored Violet, leaving David feeling like a shadow in his own home. After lending the money with a promise of repayment, his family refused to return it, leading David to take legal action. The court ruled in his favor, ordering his parents to repay the $120,000 plus legal fees. David ultimately used the money to buy his dream condo, reflecting on the meaning of family and fairness. The story concludes with a call for viewers to share their thoughts on whether they'd sue their own family in a similar situation. This video's narrative aligns with the user's request to create a similar story, focusing on family betrayal, legal action, and personal empowerment, while targeting an American audience. The user's previous requests, e.g., adjusting content for American audiences, ensuring cultural relevance, and creating engaging YouTube hooks, further support the need for a story that resonates with U.S. cultural values like individualism and fairness, while maintaining a dramatic, emotional tone suitable for YouTube. System. They stole it. Sarah stepped in, her voice firm, cutting through his smarm. We have a documented agreement, texts, bank records, and an audio recording of the defendants refusing to repay. This isn't a misunderstanding, it's a breach of contract. The hearing was on a gray September morning. The Multnomah County Courthouse, a hulking brick building downtown, its halls echoing with the shuffle of footsteps and the murmur of voices. I sat in the gallery, my hands clasped tight, as Sarah presented our case, her voice steady as she walked the judge through the evidence. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, listened intently, her gaze flicking between Sarah and their lawyer. When the audio played, Diane's voice, sharp and unapologetic, echoing through the courtroom, I saw Dad shift in his seat, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the floor. Diane's face went pale, her hands twisting in her lap, but she didn't look at me. Chloe and Ryan weren't there. They'd stayed away, probably too embarrassed to face the fallout of their dream honeymoon. The judge didn't buy their lawyer's spin. She saw the texts, heard the recording, reviewed the bank records. This was a clear financial transaction with an expectation of repayment, she said, her voice firm, her gavel resting on the bench. The defendant's refusal to honor their agreement constitutes a breach of contract and misappropriation of funds. She ruled in my favor. Michael and Diane Thompson were ordered to repay $150,000 plus $18,000 in legal fees. The courtroom was silent as she read the verdict, a heavy, uneasy quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. I wasn't there to hear it in person. I'd asked Sarah to attend on my behalf, too raw to face them, but she called me that afternoon, her voice steady as I sat at my desk at Greenwave, the hum of the office around me. "We won, Ethan. It's over." I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just felt still. Not happy. Not sad. Just free. Like I'd finally set down a weight I'd carried too long. The money hit my account 10 days later. $168,000. No note. No explanation. Just a cold transaction ID blinking on my banking app. I was in my apartment, sitting on the floor with a cup of coffee, the morning light streaming through the window, when the notification popped up. I stared at the number, my hands trembling, the reality of it sinking in. I'd done it. I'd fought for myself, for my future, and I'd won. I transferred the money to a new savings account, the one I'd opened years ago for a home I'd almost lost, and called the realtor that same day. That week, I signed the papers for the Pearl District condo, 1,200 square feet, a balcony with a view of the Willamette River, a space that felt like a promise kept. I didn't tell anyone, didn't post about it, didn't need their likes or congratulations. I moved in alone, hung a single picture frame, a photo of me at 12, with Mom, smiling on a hike in the Columbia River Gorge, her arm around me, the wind tousling our hair, and started over. I spent the first few weeks in the condo making it mine. I bought a couch from IKEA, a soft gray thing that took me 3 hours to assemble, my hands aching as I tightened the last screw. I set up my desk in the corner, my dual monitors glowing with lines of code, a space where I could work without interruption. I cooked my first meal in the kitchen, spaghetti with marinara, the steam fogging up the window as I stirred the sauce, the smell filling the apartment with warmth. I sat on the balcony that night, a glass of cheap red wine in hand, watching the river reflect the city lights, the sound of traffic a distant hum. For the first time in years, I felt whole, like I'd finally stepped into the life I'd been meant to live. Nobody's called since. Not Dad, not Diane, not Chloe. No apologies, no olive branches, no angry voicemails. Just silence, thick and final, like they've written me out of their story. I don't hate them, but I don't miss them either. Not the way I used to, when I'd lie awake hoping for a shred of their pride, a moment where I wasn't just the invisible older brother. I think about them sometimes, wonder what they tell their friends, their extended family. Maybe one day they'll tell their version, how I was the selfish one, the son who turned his back, the brother who cared more about money than family. Let them. I know my truth, and for the first time, that's enough. I think about Mom a lot these days, what she'd say if she saw me now. I like to think she'd be proud, not of the lawsuit, but of the man I've become. Someone who learned that family isn't a free pass to hurt you, that love doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. I keep her scarf in a drawer by my bed, take it out sometimes when I'm missing her, the soft blue fabric still carrying a faint trace of her perfume. I'll sit on my balcony, the scarf in my lap, and talk to her in my head, telling her about my new place, my job, the way I'm finally living for myself. I think she'd smile, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and say, "I always knew you'd find your way, kiddo." I've started building a new life, piece by piece. I've got friends now, Jake and a few others from Green Wave who grab beers on Fridays at a dive bar downtown, the kind with sticky floors and a jukebox that only plays 80s rock. We'll sit at a corner table, laughing over IPAs, talking about work, life, the Blazers' latest game. I've got a neighbor, Mrs. Carter, a retired teacher who leaves me homemade banana bread on Sundays, her handwriting shaky on the little notes she tucks under the plate. "Thought you'd like this, Ethan." I've even started dating again. A slow, tentative thing with a woman I met at a coding meetup, her laugh bright and her eyes kind. The kind of person who makes me want to open up, to let someone in after years of keeping my walls up. I'm not the same Ethan I was a year ago, the one who stayed quiet, who gave too much, who thought love meant letting people take and take until there was nothing left. I've learned that real love, whether it's family, friends, or something more, means respect, means boundaries, means seeing each other as equals, not as tools to be used. I've learned that fighting for what's right isn't selfish, it's survival, it's self-respect. It's the quietest, most powerful way to say, "I'm still here and I matter." So I'm turning to you, the ones who've stuck with me through this whole messy tale, all the way to the end. If you were in my shoes, would you fight for what's yours, even if it meant losing the only family you've got? Is there a line where fairness outweighs forgiveness? Where standing up for yourself matters more than keeping the peace? Or do you hold on, hoping love will fix what's broken, even when it keeps breaking you? Drop your thoughts below. I'm reading every one, whether you're with me or think I went too far. If this hit home, hit that like button, share it with someone who gets it, and subscribe so we can keep digging into these stories, the ones that hurt, the ones that heal, the ones that remind us who we are. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.